Oh.
There you go, echo. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please, and welcome everybody to our past meeting and on campus here to Emporia State University, which the weather has been arranged just for our visit. So we're glad to be here. Just a few reminders as we start our meeting. Please speak your name before speaking. Please share your name before speaking so that those that are listening online know who you are. Those not on the committee or speaking should keep their cameras off, please, and your microphones muted. Members, you may choose to ask the chair to be recognized to speak. Let me have just one caveat. When we get to our reports, I would suggest that you not have to be recognized because we're going to engage in dialogue with our presenters today. So feel free to just jump in at that point. Amy is going to monitor our Zoom's chat and raise your hand feature for any questions and comments. And just a reminder that we are live streamed on KBOR's YouTube channel. For the provosts that are in the room, we're glad to see you. Just kind of heads up that we're starting our good news feature this month. So looking forward to hearing your celebrations a little bit later on the agenda. Before I ask Amy to call roll, I'd like to.
Goodness, you haven't called it yet.
Yeah.
You probably managed that, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
We're going to move item 2 down a little bit later on the agenda after our report, so that all the presenters that want to speak to that item can be present. So with that, Amy, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Good morning. We have Regent Lane,
Present.
Regent Ice,
Here.
Regent Mendoza, Regent Johnston.
Here.
And then we also do have presenters today. We have Shirley LaFever here, and Casey Freitas Chapes
Here.
Gary Bailey,
Here.
Tara Labar,
Here.
Kelly Oliver. And then we also are going to have Mark Faber join us as well. Mark, can you hear us?
Yep.
Great, thank you. And that completes roll call.
Thank you so much. So now we're ready for approval of minutes from the October 31st meeting. Accept a motion. So moved. Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Regent Ice is quiet because he wasn't. Yeah. All right.
It looks awesome to me, but I can't.
We had a great discussion. So minutes have been approved, and now we're ready for our report on the quality assurance. Now, as a reminder, we've asked our presenters to hit the highlights from the PowerPoints. They sent them out to us earlier. And after that, we have opportunity just to engage in conversation and dialogue. So feel free to just jump in with your questions or comments at that point. Nathan?
Good morning, Regents. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share information about the work that the Transfer and Articulation Council has done. My name is Casey Freitas Chapes. I lost my notes. And I am the Associate University Registrar of the University of Kansas. I also serve as the TAC Co-Chair and Quality Assurance Committee Chair. The Transfer and Articulation Council is comprised of 20 members from institutions across the state and is responsible for implementing the Board of Regents policy for clear course articulation between 2- and 4-year institutions. To do this, the council coordinates the opportunity for faculty from all institutions to come together and create a consistent set of learning outcomes for courses taught at community colleges and universities. By having clarity and continuity in academic expectations through shared learning outcomes, students are being set up in subsequent courses for success that they are taking because they have a strong and, most importantly, consistent set of knowledge that they have gained from their course, regardless of what institution they took the course at. Creating a time and space for faculty across the state to meet, collaborate, and articulate what they expect from their students at the end of their class is streamlining the transfer experience for students, which in turn is reducing the amount of credit that is lost when a student transfers to a university. By transferring with predefined articulated direct course equivalencies, a student's time to complete a degree is reduced, creating the greatest victory of saving Kansas students and families time and money while gaining all the same knowledge and skills to be successful. The Quality Assurance Committee creates an annual report where the committee members, which are on slide 2, look across the state to ensure Kansas transfer students are successfully progressing academically when they move to a university. The report this year is looking at data from 21 academic year, which begins in the fall of 21 and ended in the summer of 22. We start our report with a 500-foot level, looking at overall transfer enrollment in the state. Over the last 5 years, we've seen some fluctuation in the numbers of students transferring, with the sharpest decrease in 2020, aligning with the COVID pandemic. Having this information allows us to understand transfer students over time to see if the landscape is shifting across the state. Our next set of information is looking at how students are doing once they move to their university. Going forward, the GPA is being used as an assessment measure for success. The committee looked at the GPAs of 3 groups of students for comparison: Native students who began their academic career at the university, transfer students from Kansas community colleges, and other transfer students. On these 2 slides, you can see the GPAs of these 3 student groups at the end of fall 21 at both the new and continuing students. I do not want to generalize the numbers of these 3 groups at each university, but I think it's very helpful to see how these 3 groups are progressing in relation to each other, as our greatest hope would be that these 3 groups are in close alignment with one another, showing consistent success for all of our students, not just transfers. In a further depth of review, the committee wanted to look at how successful transfer students were at the course level. And the next section of our report looks at the GPAs of students who took the first course in a sequence at a community college and the second course in a sequence at the university. The committee selected course sequences in English, math, chemistry, and psychology to review because these are some of the most offered and transferred courses. In most of these course sequences, we see that our Kansas transfer students are well prepared and succeeding in their university courses with GPAs in alignment, if not greater than their native student peers in the second course of the sequence. I do want to acknowledge one challenge with our sequential course data. In most of our data, the second course of the sequence has significantly smaller numbers of students enrolled in it at the university level. This can be due to students not needing the second course in the sequence for their degree, or if the course is needed, that the students take all courses within the sequence at one university before transferring. Overall, the quality assurance report has been able to show that having outcomes in alignment at the 2- and 4-year level is supporting transfer student success, with students having strong GPAs in their first and subsequent terms of enrollment at the university, as well as having strong academic preparation to be successful in the second course of a sequence when taken at the university. I want to thank you all for your time today. It's been a privilege to serve on the committee, and with 116 courses in system-wide transfer and 4 more courses being recommended for inclusion, the number of course options for transfer students in Kansas to enroll in with clear articulation is robust. I look forward to seeing the next phase of growth for our transfer student success in Kansas.
Thank you, Casey. We look forward to that as well. So, members, what questions or comments do you have for Casey?
I would just like to say I really appreciate that information. Thank you. That kind of data really does support the idea of system-wide transfer. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Casey, would you describe from your perspective your what you're most proud of and what's the biggest challenge that you're currently working on?
So as a person, as an individual, or as the TAC conversation?
However you want to approach that.
So I think they similarly coincide. I think the greatest successes that I'm seeing are these higher numbers of students being able to have clearer lines and clearer ways to make those movements from the 2 years to the 4 years, whether they've completed a full degree, whether they're just taking a couple courses, and weaving those pieces together so that even if they started a 2-year and they go to a 4-year, or they started a 4-year and take courses at a 2-year, this kind of swirling of students, that all the course still comes in beautifully for students and that nobody is losing anything in that process. I think the greatest challenge is that as our students coming in, they having the transparency that they need to be able to make the decisions that they are looking for. And so making sure that all resources are available to them in the most transparent way is really important, because our students self-advise and they look and they use their resources, which are online, before they even come into universities and come into the community colleges to do some research. So making sure that we have the resources and tools at every level, at every institution, to make sure students know what those opportunities are, to make sure that they're successful is really important. And I think a challenge at times with changing pieces and changing movement.
Thank you. We can tell you're so passionate about this work and really appreciate that. In alignment with one of your comments, I was wondering, how do we count high school students who transfer? How do we support them as they transfer in with college credit?
I think the big piece for those students that are coming in as freshmen and bringing in credit, they're coming in with courses from their community colleges, are coming in from dual credit, they're coming in from AP and test credit. And so I think making sure that they understand how those credits are going to apply when they come in so that they don't do duplicate work is something that I think is really important. I've seen it at the University of Kansas where students take a dual credit course and then they also take an AP test and they don't realize that the credits are the same because they're called something that sounds a little different. And so really making sure, once again, that those transparency pieces are there. And they don't know the questions to ask. So trying to help do that proactive piece ahead of time. A 17-year-old doesn't know what they don't know. And so really trying to make sure that those students in high school, first generation students, adult learners coming back to college that have been out for a while are really getting the information they have in a way that makes sense to them with language that's consistent and accessible.
I appreciate that. And hopefully we're all thinking about that as we move this forward. On a couple of your slides, you noted that some data was not included for various reasons from a couple of institutions or sector.
Mm-hmm.
How should we think about this data when we know it's not as complete as we would like?
I think it allows us the chance to look at how we're going to struggle ongoing. That piece it's just going to be missing for a few years, and so our apples are not in alignment. But I think we can still take a piece, and it gives us a reference point for how students were doing previously, and we can look at those institutions more in an apple-to-apple comparison if we exclude the institution that was missing, so we can kind of see that overall number, as well as trying to help make sure that the resources and technology, I know transition with technology and getting information out of systems can be really challenging. So helping support those increased integrations as best as possible.
So are there additional resources that have been expressed that are necessary by these institutions so that they can fully engage?
From my understanding, there was just a way that their data is collected and a system shift. And so trying to then translate that into what data is needing to be sent over has been a little bit of a challenge. And they're getting closer to getting it all figured out and are just working on streamlining those pieces. So I think there may be another year of slight discrepancy, but then the hope is that after that we'll be back in alignment.
Thank you so much. I'm pleased to hear we're moving forward. My last question, then we'll let you go. You noted on one of, I think it was like slide 18 or 19 of that, you add new courses as appropriate. Of course, I'm wondering, how do you define appropriate? How will you identify those?
Yep. So we identify courses for a couple different capacities. We first look at what majors are transferring and are in the greatest popularity of students. And so we look at courses that are utilized in those majors. We also look at what's at the greatest need. We look at what courses are being taught at both the community college and the university, and try and look at the scope of how many community colleges are teaching those courses so that we have that offering accessible to a variety of students. And then we look at how many of the universities are offering it at the as well, to make sure that it's being taught at a similar level. We also elicit feedback from faculty. So at our KCOG conference, as we work with our groups, we ask them for what courses they think would be really helpful to see as part of this group. And they generally, as our content experts, have lots of interesting and really wonderful suggestions for courses that they can help our students gain before they come into the university level.
Thank you, Casey. Great work in this area. Regent Ice.
So I think it's I think it's helpful to note that, you know, upon occasion, it's important for a group like ours to affirm that the policies and the decisions we made, that where the action really happens, that it's going the way we are expect and hope. And so that's clearly what this is. And so we appreciate your effort as chair. Certainly thank the rest of the council for all of us for doing this work. It is encouraging results. So thank you.
Could I jump in there for just a second too? Yeah, great work, Casey. Would you say that typically the transfer courses or general education are at least 100 and 200 level courses that you focus on when choosing? I just wanted to.
Yes, that's the intent. Sometimes the universities, they're numbered a little higher, but we come to the consistent outcomes so that they do equate over. And then we encourage universities to go back and review their course numbering.
Thank you.
Please, and if you remember Regent Logan, when this first started, in his goal, it was like the first course also in the majors, in addition to the gen ed. So it doesn't just stop at gen ed, it's those first lower level courses within a major.
But mostly 100 and 200 level
Yes,
courses.
yes.
Thank you, Carla.
Please.
I had a question about the resources that you mentioned. You mentioned getting resources in front of students that may not understand that dual credit courses count for something else, or it might be the same thing. You also mentioned some of the subgroups that you try to target because they don't always have that information. What are some of the ways that those resources are being made available to them? We have them, but how are we making sure that the students get those?
Yeah, so I think we have strong partnerships with counselors at at high schools across the state, and making sure that we are using those the communications and the connections. There is the challenge that comes over is as connections turn over, as those people leave those roles, and getting the new connections aligned. Most institutions have recruiters that bring that information out, but registrar offices are working very hard, and admissions offices are working very hard to make sure that they have guides that are on their institutional websites, as well as shared out as those are updated through that. There isn't a great way to get information from a university into a direct student's hand that hasn't already worked into an admissions funnel. And so we can get that to students that have reached out, but that proactive information, we really rely heavily on that high school or that public website piece until we have the information to connect ourselves with them.
Mendoza, that's something that I've also done in my work in the last 3 years, is trying to get information about our system-wide transfer courses as a system out to our Kansas counselors. And then also this second semester earlier this year, I did some workshops specifically on the gen ed package too. So that counselors could begin advising their students, their juniors and seniors, on that gen ed package, the buckets, and trying to get that information out as much as possible, just from a system-wide standpoint. So we're trying all working in the same direction, hopefully. Perfect, thank you.
There's a lot of enthusiasm in the room, Casey. So thank you for your team and your leadership on this. And we look forward to continuing to support your work.
Great, thank you so much.
Now we're ready for the Open Education Resource Report from Tara and Barry.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to pull up our presentation here, and while I do that, I'll let Barry introduce himself. He is a faculty and honor OER steering committee. He's from Johnson County Community College. Barry, I'll let you take it away.
That's me. You don't have a lot of time. Let's get into this. So open educational resources.
We have to at least know about the photo, the picture.
Oh, I am a fan of professional wrestling. So open educational resources are materials that are both physical and digital, and are used to create no cost, low cost materials for students, and they're licensed to be used and remixed and revised on their own, as opposed to publisher materials where the copyright's more restrictive. And this is important because on the next slide, you'll see that there's been a significant increase in the cost of textbooks over time, 800% increase versus the regular consumer price index. So it's been proven that access to OERs with free classroom materials, as opposed to traditional texts, create better access and more equity in access and help ensure student success for those that might be making tough financial decisions. Now, the OER steering committee here formed in 2019, and we've got representatives from most of our institutions. You can see on the next slide that our past initiatives were plenty, but really looking forward to the future. 3 things to highlight. LibreText is a tool that lets us create, assemble, and distribute OERs, and having access to that at all of our institutions will be fantastic. High enrollment course grant program, we've got collaborations between institutions looking at creating and using OERs for some very specific disciplines. And the Showcase at the Rotunda, which will be the second one that we've done as the OER steering committee, this time comes with the addition of a legislative ask that we will cover as we go on to help us get some funds to do things like create an internal grant program. So moving on, we've got this survey. This will be the 3rd year it's been done. And 30 out of 33 of our institutions responded. If you want to see the original survey, the link's provided. But we have some major findings that came out of this. The majority of institutions do have policies or programs or support for OER. However, it appears to have stalled in its steam. Of the institutions who responded, only 2 have led grant applications for external grant awards. And this was a new question that we were looking at this year. Time, resources, and awareness continue to be the primary barriers when it comes to getting OERs implemented on your campus. So the next few slides will just kind of breeze through. A lot of information is similar to what we've seen before. Some highlights from these slides is the increase in activity from English departments being documented across campuses and leading OER initiatives. That's fantastic. Grant programs, again, they stall out pretty low. On the next slide, you'll see that the awareness is almost identical from what we've seen as far as who really is on top of this: libraries, bookstores, administrators. And then when we get to this next bit, we have seen that OER usage continues to be low, but if you compare this to previous surveys, the 6 to 10% is expanding. And as Tara reminded me last meeting, we think that there might be enough data to collect and add some more categories in addition to the more than 10%. I'll briefly say that course marking is something that's very exciting as people are looking into. What that is a way for institutions to both internally track who's actually using OER materials in their course rooms, but also to course mark in things like your course catalog so that students have the ability to view what opportunities they have to participate in courses that might have low or no cost for their textbooks. On the next slide, you'll see that we have these pursuing the external grants. Really, the biggest challenge is that even if all Kansas institutions are applying for them, we're up against much larger consortiums. The opportunity to get these funds is just really hard to do. And this is one of the reasons why the legislative ask has a contingency for grant funding internal to the state to pursue OER initiatives. So in conclusion, the results are similar, but we're seeing a few improvements in different areas. They are showing that these activities and methods of support we're using are making positive impact. And we're also demonstrating the need for some other internal funding opportunities on account of just the difficulty in applying to these sort of larger external ones. So with that, I will stop and entertain questions.
Yeah, and as we talk about, we can talk about the legislative ask a little bit more, but within that would be a statewide OER grant or funds specifically for OER initiatives at institutions, our KBOR system institutions, but also potentially all Kansas higher ed institutions could have access to that money potentially. And so that's something that we're really excited about. The other thing I would say is we actually have a guest with us today too. Mark Faber was the student body chair from Fort Hays State in February of 2022 when we held our Kansas OER Summit. And he
spoke to our attendees on the first day. And we've asked him just to say a little bit about what OER means as a student, because now he's also back on the Student Advisory Committee representing the University of Kansas Medical Center. So Mark, if you are around and maybe want to say just a couple words.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction. So like she said, I'm Mark Faber. I'm the student body president now at KU Med, but some of you may remember me from when I was the student body president at Fort Hays State just a couple years ago. And like mentioned, I did get to speak at the Kansas OER Summit, and something that I'm pretty passionate about as a student. And so Tara and Barry, they asked me if I would be willing to give a little reflection just on my experiences. And so I kind of just wanted to keep it pretty simple. First off, I just kind of wanted to share some insight on like the financial impact that course materials and the potential of open educational resources has on subsidizing the cost for students. And I kind of think like the best way to highlight this is just kind of to remember back to my freshman year of undergrad. And I think there's a common dilemma that most freshman students face, and that's high textbook costs. And so I remember my first day pretty clearly. I was told, you're going to spend about $4,000 on your books, and that's going to be throughout your whole entire college. And then on my first day, I remember the first book that I bought was $500, and I was like, oh, well, there's my budget for this semester already. And I quickly found out that this experience wasn't unique. Many freshmen encountered similar financial strains, and they often realized that a lot of the textbooks really weren't necessarily essential to the classes, but then some classes they were essential to. And so this kind of led me to kind of a coping strategy for buying books. And I called this the cautious buying process. And so basically what I would do is, as a cost saving measure, it certainly wasn't ideal for getting as much out of the class as I could, but I would wait until the teacher assigned something out of the book. And that's when I would decide if I needed to buy the book or not. And so it worked really well for me because it made it so that I didn't have to buy as many books, but it also kind of put me behind and put me at a disadvantage because I didn't have all the resources that I would have liked to had. So then later on in my undergrad career, I encountered another solution, and this one was much better. It was in the form of a biology class using open educational resources. And the professor, he chose a free textbook, supplementing it with just various resources. And I think this approach enhanced all of the students' learning experience, and it also leveled the playing field for all the students, as like each student now had the material that they needed to succeed. And there wasn't any like you have to look for extra resources and stuff like that. And so from discussing with students over the years, both at KU and at Fort Hays, I really have found a unanimous appreciation for OER. And I think most similar to myself were pretty unfamiliar with it initially, but once they understood what OER was, they definitely preferred classes that used it. And some students even choose courses based on the OER availability. And I know that to be true because I put out a survey when I was at Fort Hays and found that was actually very common. So I won't take up too much more of your time, but I think my personal experiences and just discussions with peers, I think it really underscores the significant positive impact that open educational resources has in education. And I just wholeheartedly support its increased use across Kansas universities. And I just think it's a really good initiative because it's so student-centered and the students just really appreciate it. So that's all I had time for. I hope this clarified kind of the student perspective for everybody, and it's what everybody wanted to hear. But if you guys have any questions, I'm also very willing to answer questions as well.
Thank you, Mark. And then we'll open up for questions about the report, OER in Kansas. Obviously, we're really glad to have Mark back too. And Amy put the link to his original video from the OER Summit in the chat for anybody who would like to watch it. It's really good. He did a great job.
Thank you so much. Mark, I'm going to start with a question to you. And if you haven't seen this video, please go see it. I was really excited to see it. So you left out the portion of your story that I thought was extraordinarily compelling about standing in line with your pile of books your freshman year, and you had just spent your allotment on food. Could you just kind of share a little more insight into that as a freshman? And the reason I'm asking you is because it really signals to us to be thinking about how to clearly communicate strategies to freshmen.
You know, I'm not 100% sure if I remember what I had said, but with that said, though, I do remember like my freshman year, just like budget in general was very, very tight. And I just remember like really worrying about things. And I just remember buying books that I didn't even end up opening up because the teachers really didn't use them much. They just said that they were necessary for me to have. And so like any freshman, I wanted to be on top of things and order those books. But yeah, sorry, I don't really remember exactly what I was talking about then.
It's not that important. It had to do with a debit card that you were already at the top of your limit on your debit card when you were in the first one. So
That makes sense.
It really spoke to the how powerful this can be. So let me just ask you one more question, and then please other regents jump in. How might we strengthen freshman orientation around the topic of open education resources?
Yeah, I think the best way to do that is just have like a presentation on open educational resources. That way all the students are aware of it. Teach them how to find those classes, because I know that they're at like Fort Hays, they're mentioned, you know, this specific class uses open educational resources. And I know once I found out that that was a possibility to look for, I started looking for classes that use those. And I know a lot of people that also did that. And so I think just, you know, going through the steps of looking for those classes, and then also just encouraging students to I guess not be scared to not buy a book until you know that you're going to use it, because that's something that even as I went on more in my undergrad career was that professors would kind of tell you like, hey, like this is the book we use. There's ways to find these resources without using this book. And then I think just a really, really good initiative would be, you know, working with professors and trying to get them to just use open educational resources whenever possible. But I think for freshman seminars, definitely just a presentation that explains everything that you need to know step by step.
If I may jump in here, I know the question's for Mark, but he highlighted a great point about those course marking initiatives. The more campuses that adopt ways to communicate to students through things like the catalog that OER sections are available for courses they want or need to take, the better it, you know, can be adapted and meet those students both for want and need as far as using OERs go.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Other comments or questions?
So how big's the legislative ask?
So we asked for $200,000 annually. Part of that would fund someone to work specifically on OER out of academic affairs and run a grant program for that. It would also cover the LibreText subscription moving on. That would be available to all of our all 32 system-wide institutions, so that if they wanted that, we would be able to purchase that subscription for them.
And what are the various institutions putting towards this?
They,
Well, for instance, in 2021, the All In for K-State Day was TechPoints 2.0.
right,
It was, I think we quoted the same $750,000 for students through it. So there was that kind of amount of funding did something.
Yeah.
For some set of students.
So-
I would hope we would pursue some of those in addition.
we do, so
Actually,
Barry
something
reported that
Dollars got really excited about.
all 7 of our universities have a grant program, similar to the K-State grant program that fund initiatives. And you can see that our universities are probably a little further down the line with OER adoption and implementation than our community colleges and our technical colleges. And so this would be an effort to help bring the additional institutions along up to the speed of where the universities are and then move forward. Another thing that would be like the big dream looking down the road goes back to course marking, because that's really different at every institution. How do we track
the number of OERs that faculty are using? Or do we have a system to track that internally at the institution? But then also, do we have a way to put that forward facing for students to select courses based on OER? And we don't have any type of consistency going that way. Like I said, the big dream would be eventually we could even track that at the K-Board level. That would be part of their annual data, but that's way down the road, because that would take a lot of infrastructure at all the different universities. So those would be the types of things we could use the money for, and to encourage adoption, and look at additional course marking, things like that.
Okay. And of course, I never want to suggest that the professors aren't doing an awesome job of assigning the right textbook. So in case we say anything like that.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions?
I do have one question, sorry,
Yeah.
Diana. Could some of the funding be used to, it sounds like it could, to incentivize departments and faculty to use OER? And if so, I would be interested in seeing what the colleges and universities think would be appropriate incentives to make sure that we're moving in that direction.
Yes, so that's really the hope for the grant fund would be we could set up a couple different avenues for that grant, that statewide grant. One, there could be an application for institutions to say, we want to start this initiative. We'd like to apply for some money to do that. Part of it could be an application for individual faculty. And I'd love to see us create a pathway to incentivize adoption. And similarly to what we're doing with the 5 system-wide transfer courses, we only had a very small amount of money. So we were using that again to try to impact our 5 highest enrolled system-wide transfer courses. But I would love to set up a system where we could incentivize faculty to adopt who want a stipend or something to adopt OER as a system. We could bring faculty together, similar like the KCOG, and say, you know, who wants to look at some OER for our system-wide transfer courses. You know, we could do that in the sequence, or we could just have faculty who are interested in adopting apply on their own and say, I'd like to be a part of this, so I could adopt. So I think right now there's flexibility on how we could use those funds annually. And I think there's a lot of potential there.
So as a student, I love this because I've used this a lot in my courses. But as Mark was talking and I was thinking through some of this, I'm wondering if there are books assigned to a course and the book isn't even utilized, how do we go about, so when I enroll in my classes, there's a link that says this is the book you need, or you don't need a textbook. So how do we make sure that instructors aren't listing the book, or the system isn't identifying the book if it's not going to be utilized? Is that where different professors teach the same course, one uses it, one doesn't? Do we need to, how do we start? And maybe that's what this is all about in the first place, but it just got my mind thinking, how do we alleviate some of that expense for our students? If they're not going to utilize it, it shouldn't be listed.
So Carla, I don't know what, you know more history on our oversight there.
I think that is an institutional decision, but I think we could look at the best practices. I know when I was a faculty member, the books that I chose, I always had a copy at the library to check out if students, you know, OER wasn't even a thought when I was teaching, but there are other things that faculty do, but as far as the administration at each institution, making sure that if you put a course on the list, surely you plan to utilize it in some way.
Well, I mean, the textbooks that I have had to purchase, I've utilized them and I've kept them because they're relevant to the work that I do, but I would hate for a student to have a book that's sealed and never break it open and have spent the money for it, so.
And hopefully that's like the rare occasion.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Great discussion. Thank you all very much. And Mark, and special appreciation to you for jumping in with a last minute invitation. So great report, Barry and Tara. Let me know how we can continue to support the work.
Great. Yeah. And thank you to Barry for heading up the data committee and wrangling all of this data for us each year. We appreciate it.
Wrestling the data.
Exactly, wrestling the data, yes.
Not a problem. Thanks all.
All right, we're now ready for our report on approval of the support metrics for strategic plan pillar 1. Board, help me remember that we do need a motion to consider approving the support metrics, and don't let me move past that. Kelly is here, and I think Cindy Warrior is joining us for this presentation.
Yes, Cindy is online, so she can help answer all the questions. So Kelly Oliver, with the Board of Regents office, I just wanted to go over, I think we have a PowerPoint, and you should each have a copy of it as well at your place, but I just wanted to go over some background. How did we get to this point? Talk a little bit just about the foundational metrics that were approved by the board in February, and then where are we moving to go forward to look at some supportive metrics for the dashboard. So next slide, please. And actually, you can go 2 slides. Kind of talk about the background and development. So you're all familiar with our strategic plan, building a future that has 3 pillars. The dashboard right now is focused on the family pillar. That's where we're at right now. And we've created already some foundational metrics under affordability, access, and success. Once we get through these next supportive metrics, we'll move on to the business pillar and then to the economic prosperity. Next slide. So just a little bit about the background and the timeline. In June of 2020, the board adopted our strategic plan. And then in the fall of 21, the board engaged with Georgia State University and their NIST program, where they came in and helped our universities to identify and understand barriers towards student success. And then May of the next year, May of 22, the NIST presented their findings and recommendations, gave each university a student success playbook to move forward to help make changes on their campuses to help with students. Then at the board retreat in that July, the board discussed the creation of a strategic plan dashboard to track metrics on student success and how each university is moving forward. And in February of this year, the board approved the foundational metrics for pillar 1 for our family pillar. And in June of this year, our data team did a wonderful job in creating a dashboard and got it up and going by June of this year, which is now live and on our website. Sorry, I forgot I had these transitional slides. So just a background for you, foundational metrics that we have fit under those 3 areas of affordability, access, and success. Under the affordability portion of that pillar, we have need-based aid, on-time graduation, or on-time pace towards graduation. So how many hours are students completing towards graduation? Sufficient course load. Are they enrolling in enough courses to get them to graduate in 4 years? Looking at attrition rates, their student loan debt, and then any default rates on their student loans. And then under the access pillar, we're looking at high school enrollments, their college going rates, and enrollment gaps. And we have different breakdowns of these different areas on our dashboard as well. And then under the success portion of this, we look at persistent rates, degrees and certificates earned, and graduates that are earning a sustained wage. So those are our foundational metrics, and those are ones that we call lagging. So they're after the fact. So the student has completed, here's their grades, this is what's going on. So for those foundational metrics, we are already collecting this data, but we want to modify or enhance some of our foundational metrics. And so we want to look at the percent of students that are participating in co-requisite versus developmental education. The next one is looking at sufficient course load completion. So a student is enrolled in 30 credit hours. Did they complete 30 credit hours? So we want to have an indicator to look at that. And then the final was we want to expand our high school enrollment to look at more information within that high school enrollment, including race, gender, rural versus urban, social economic, and what are their pass rates. So these metrics, we already have the data for, but and we collect the data. It doesn't require a new collection, but it's just some changes that we want to make going forward. Then we will move to the supportive metrics. So we have some proposed supportive metrics. Again, these 4 are ones that we already collect the data for. And our team, I should have mentioned this on the previous slide. Our team has already has been working on these a bit because this has been talked about. And the proposed completion date or the projected completion date to be live on our website is January of this next year. So in this area of the data that we already collect, we have FAFSA completion. And since there's a new FAFSA form coming out, we may be delayed a year, but we'll be able to report what we have from this last year. Transfer students by program. We'll do a little bit more look at high school students, not only students that have they completed, but are they enrolling? So we're going to look at that at fall census. And then same thing with sufficient course load. So looking at that enrollment at fall census, not just upon completion.
So could you give a little more color to the transfer students by program? What are we trying to ascertain?
Yes. So let me actually get my notes, or Cindy, if you're online, you might help me. I think we want to look at students that are by particular program. Is that right, Cindy?
I am online. I could not hear the question. So could you repeat the question?
Sure, I was looking for more detail on what the driver is behind the transfer student by program. I understand we're stratifying it, but what are we trying to ascertain?
Right. We're trying to look at eventually how these program to program transfer initiatives are going. So, we're looking at right now the elementary ed, and then in this year or next, we're looking at perhaps nursing transfer to transfer programs. So we want to really look at how students transfer from a 2-year college to a 4-year college at that program level to garner success in these initiatives.
Well, those are awesome programs that we need. I don't want to accidentally suggest anything but that. And of course, transferring from the community colleges, the tech colleges is also important. I did that personally. But having said all that, I mean, it seems like this is a measure about a subset of our students as opposed to all of our students. And so that's what I was asking.
It is. We will look at all transfer programs, not just the ones for the initiative. The dashboard to be able to display it, we may just do like the top however many programs and have the data behind the scenes if we need to take a deeper dive. But we will actually work on it with all programs so that we can also further identify what are places that a new program to program transfer program could be added. And we do have on our regular KeyStats website a very comprehensive transfer feedback report. And then we also do the transfer data that you were shown earlier today to help augment that support.
I understand your point. It's just, it's a portion of our students though that we'll be looking at with this metric.
Yeah, I think the big idea, I appreciate you highlighting that, is that we want to look at transfer students in general and look at them down to the program level. Is there a difference between the transfer student success in program A versus program B? So I would characterize it a little bit different than Cindy Barrier did.
Okay. And again, I'm all for that, but the majority of our students don't transfer.
Right.
So, and yet one of the 4 supporting metrics is about transfer students. I just would like to make sure we contemplate measures for that include the one.
And we will.
I think you will on their next slide.
Yeah.
Very good.
Excellent.
Way to set that up.
The next slide, slide 10. So these are additional supportive metrics that we in our office don't currently collect. So these are new data. So we kind of have 2 areas, advising and grades, that we want to look at. How are these students, how are they doing? So under the advising area, we look at students that are participating with centralized advisors, students accessing support services, and students that are retained relative to those that are flagged in an early alert. So a student may be flagged as an early alert because they're falling behind in a class, or they maybe have reached out to a professor or someone else on campus. The other category then is grades. So these metrics would look at, what courses have a high number of students that are falling behind, that have B's, F's, or W. We would look to create a percentage of either students that are in those courses that may fall into that category. We also look at progress of students that are below average grades. So how are they progressing? Are they completing that semester? Are they re-enrolling? And so then the final one is students with passing grades that had it earlier in the semester. So did they seek support services? Did they finish that? Are they re-enrolling for this next semester? As I said, these data are not collected yet in our office. Each of the universities, though, have either already implemented or are in the midst of implementing an EAB Navigate system on their campuses. We've been talking with our consultants and our contacts at EAB to see, would this data be available? And preliminarily, yes, we have lots of discussions yet to have, not only with the EAB team, but also with our university partners. Because just because a university may have already implemented the Navigate system doesn't mean that they necessarily are already tracking all of this data. And so we need to have further conversations with them, because if we're not tracking it within that system, then we would need to create an additional data collection. If it all goes well with the EAB implementation and with Navigate, we could start to preliminary get information out of the system next fall from the universities and start to look at that to do reporting at that point. So these metrics would be on all students, or at least those students in these different areas, and not just transfer.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I really appreciate all the work that you and your team and Cindy's team have done on this. So board, what comments or questions do you have? And then I have a follow-up comment. Okay, seeing nothing, Kelly's and the team were kind enough to present us with a one-pager, so that with these in our action here. And with these we're making some improvements to the foundational metrics, and then we're approving for the first time our support metrics. Just to reiterate, some we already collect, some the campuses have, but we don't collect as a system, so that's why the EAB tool will be helpful. But today our task is to approve the modifications or enhancements to the foundational metrics, and then approve the support metrics. So let me pause there before I share kind of some next steps. So I guess my question to the group is, are we ready for a motion to approve, or are there any changes that you would like to suggest that we make? What's your feedback?
I think it's difficult. I mean, these all look like good measures to me. I think it's difficult to be able to say what isn't there, or which one is it particularly harder to develop than another. I think there's some importance to if one was virtually impossible to get, but we would do the same report. So I have a framework and perfectly comfortable with where we need to evolve.
Right. It is approved.
Regent Lang, can I add something?
Yes, please.
To Regent Ice's comment. We have in our conversations with our EAB folks, asked for their input. What are other systems looking at? What other system, what type of data are they looking at? So we're actually trying to see if there's other things that, well, this is what we would recommend, the metrics that you would look at as well. So I guess I would also ask for maybe some refinement further, as we further those conversations, as we might find out that we should be looking at, I don't know what metric it might be, but something else in addition.
Well said.
I completely agree with that. I think it needs to be a dynamic process. I don't know if we need a timeline on that says, you know what, we need to first are going to have to give the universities and the colleges, or in this case, universities, time to get the data to us. Do we need a timeline that says, all right, we need to see if we need to refine this in 2 years and 3 years? Do you know what I'm saying? I just would hate for it to just be like, this is it. you know, without any follow-up. And so maybe that needs to be a formalized process to follow up. I'm not sure that it does. But I have a sneaking feeling that some of them will work and some of them will be like, yeah, that don't be anything, so.
So let me share, kind of where the subcommittee's head has been and, where my head is in this. These are leading measures. They're supposed to tell us whether or not we're going to move our data in a positive direction on the foundational metrics, right? So these items need to be things that that are actionable, that our universities are investing in, and I think we can confirm that they are. And how are their actions helping in terms of student success? So the thought is, and I think we need to have a conversation with the provost to talk more specifically about the process. The beginning, well, next month, the plan is to bring you the process of how we plan to use the support metrics in BASC. Start using them in January. And through that process, we will soon learn whether or not these measures, number one, that the campuses can report on and they think that they're actionable. And number two, if they are really helping us move that needle. So it's a fluid process. So approving these metrics today should not feel like they are in stone, because we are making an educated guess that these measures based on best practice will help us ensure student success. And so we need to be ready to make changes. So perhaps approval today could be to pilot these. If that's a word that would help the group feel more comfortable, that we're going to pilot these in collaboration with our provost and their staff to determine whether or not these are things that we should be looking at and that they are actually helping them move their students towards higher levels of success.
I'm comfortable that you say they're more than pilots. I just think they need to reflect. We're gonna have a period we need to make adjustments. Then we're gonna have a period we need to stop making adjustments, because then we're gonna have people working towards these, and then we'll be saying, never mind, those aren't the right ones. That's not gonna be so helpful.
Right.
So that was really the only point.
So a commitment that we are fluid and continuous improvement is there.
I'm good with that.
Okay. All right, well, if someone would
I'll
have
move
the
it.
courage to,
I'll move it now
and what did your motion say? Really nice.
to, well, I'd say to what you said when you handed it to it. That we modified some of the foundational metrics, and we begin to work on developing these others with actually having a timeline and recognizing that people will be dynamic.
About that, Amy?
So
All right.
pre-recorded.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a
That,
second?
you feel free to change it too, if you want.
There's a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Right, progress, one step forward. So provosts that are here and that are listening, I'll be reaching out to get on your schedule so we can talk about process.
And everything we said should leave them plenty of room to be hopeful.
Right, right. Cool. Very good.
Can you say?
Thank you all. Absolutely. And, you know, I pledge that BASC will use this tool on a regular basis so we can, do two things. Understand how our students are progressing, understand how the resources are helping them progress. And maybe the third thing is, this is a valuable tool that, justifies the time our staff spend utilizing. So. All right, very good. Thank you all for that report. Now if we could now move back to the item under our consent agenda and invite Provost Beaver forward, and I believe Provost McLeod as well.
Morning, everyone. I appreciate being on the agenda this morning. So Wichita State received a request from Shawnee Mission South in August to offer 3 courses in Arabic as concurrent courses. So we reached out to both KU and Pittsburgh State and received approval from them for us to offer those courses. And check the catalog for Johnson County Community College, didn't see those courses offered. So we are putting this proposal forward to request permission to offer these as a concurrent credit option for these high school students. I understand that there's been some development since, so this may be a temporary solution to their request. Wanted to bring it forward.
Yes. And so in speaking this week, with a few folks and having this brought to our attention at Johnson County. We did a little bit of background research, and I spoke with Dr. Fielder this morning to kind of clarify. We are not looking to oppose, because I feel like her department's done some work and they've reached forward for some of these things. But Johnson County was not part of the loop in closing the loop on actually offering these courses, which is our service area as a community college, and we are the primary host of College Now for the Shawnee Mission District, as well as several of the districts surrounding it. In this particular case, without a checkpoint that requires them to check with the community college, they did due diligence by looking at the website. We have 18 actual languages that we have offered on our campus, but some of those courses have not been offered in recent years due to a lack of interest from our student body, but they are within our curriculum body. They simply aren't part of the current catalog because we have not offered the courses. And so we could have met this particular need, but I think this goes a little bit further and goes into communication with our K-12 partners about the language they use, because one of the pieces of information that I dug up in looking into this last Friday when it was put on my desk, knowing that these meetings are being held today, is that the initial ask in August from the school district used incorrect language, which caused the folks in our early college office to tell them that they could not have what they needed from us, because the ask from the assistant superintendent was actually for an independent study course offered as concurrent enrollment. By policy, we do not offer independent study as concurrent enrollment. That is for Native students who are already at college age. We want high school students to be supervised, to be working with faculty in a more direct way. And so by policy, we don't offer that. So what was asked for in the initial stages that seems to have started this train rolling down the tracks was a denial of something that was asked for that's actually against policy, because our K-12 partners do not understand our language. And the email that was sent actually had an ask for something that was not deliverable, which by the time people had been spoken to, morphed into, no, we actually have a master's prepared individual at this particular high school in this language who could offer this as a concurrent enrollment course, which we didn't find out about until I started digging into it all of last Friday, after this has been going on since August. So really, we probably need to clarify what the role of the community college that serves most of this dual credit population is, whether or not the out of service area agreements, which we work with KU on fairly regularly because of our presence in doing some of that early college work across in Baldwin, which is within their area, but outside of Johnson County's area. So we have some of this in place, but we don't have, I believe, a clear policy guideline that outlines the role of the community college in working with these, because I think this snafu could have been avoided. Even if I'd had 7 more days before I found out about it, we could have probably fixed this before we got to this point. So it is, again, not Johnson County's position that we want to stop those students from having access to that credit. We want to make sure that they have an opportunity to have it. We know that Wichita State has already done some work in this area and has gotten things and all the paperwork filed. So we're not looking to void this particular movement this semester, but we would like some future clarity on our role and the ability for the community college to weigh in, as we tend to be about 80% of the concurrent enrollment in our particular county. And we do have a robust stable of PhD faculty at Johnson County that do a lot of this work. And so it's kind of our contention that there's a process error here, not that we need to hold up the bus on getting these students what they need.
Regent Lane, might I be recognized also?
Yes.
Thank you. I just like to add, first of all, I want to express great appreciation to Wichita State and to Provost Lefevre for answering a call from a high school in Johnson County. I also want to recognize a little bit of the backstory is that Shawnee Mission South contacted KU in the fall, and we are not yet ready. We are in the process and we made some transitions and we're completely redoing dual credit and our ability to scale up. So the approval that we gave was to say, we'd like and appreciate Wichita State's help for the year. We didn't know Johnson County had that capacity either at that moment in time because of the process. And we greatly appreciate them reaching out. We would like to revisit in a year to see if we have the capacity, if there's another answer before we make a blanket approval in our service area. So just wanted to give that bit of the process, but greatly appreciate that they're moving forward and happy to support this for the year that we wrote in our approval letter.
Okay, very much for that. Carla, shine a light for us on what we might need to be doing moving forward to address this process issue that Provost McLeod brought forward.
I'm guessing that you want to be a part of the communication for the universities and their service areas.
Yes, when it crosses into our service area, particularly for us, we spend a great deal of effort and have an office that functions in this regard. We'd like to make sure that if we can cover closer to home what is necessary in our area, that we are afforded the opportunity. So,
And our current policy encourages the collaboration between all institutions. And, you know, at some point in time, when they called you and, you know, the independent study part was maybe what didn't, but at that point in time, maybe contacting KU to say, hey, we don't have anything right now, we're not offering this, they want an independent study, or whoever, you know, that communication, because the service areas of the universities were covered in policy. I think whatever there was the courtesy that you're expecting to be included, I think that could be put in there. I'm not sure it needs to be policy. I think WSU was just really worried about getting the stuff from Pitt State and KU and leaving the Shawnee Mission School District students hanging on, are we gonna get credit for this, you know? So I'm not sure I answered your question, but policy was covered.
I hear that. So it may have been a communication thing. I would just ask that all parties around this topic get in the room and make some recommendations back on whether or not Mass needs to take any action or the board on the item. So it sounds like, thank you very much for opening the opportunity to resolve it at that point. Board, I understand that these students are already in this course. And so this is not a future action for them. This is a current action that they are hoping to receive credit. So that's an important piece to know. Any other questions?
Regent Lane?
Yes.
I do have a question. Carla, can you clarify for me the process that we already have in place to teach courses out of your service area in someone else's service area? We have a lot of places that have shared service areas, universities and community colleges. I thought that the process was that whomever service area it was, regardless of whether they had the program or not, has the opportunity to either say, sure, go ahead and do that or not. And it sounds to me like we could have avoided this issue had Johnson County been asked, because it is Johnson County service area, correct? Is there something in the procedure that I don't know about that says that you don't have to contact a community college?
So there's different service areas. The state is divided up into 3 areas for the universities. Johnson County is Pitt State's and KU's service area. They have an obligation to meet the students in those. So the service areas for the community college, they don't overlap unless it's a home county of the university.
So this is not Johnson County service area?
Not for the universities. The universities are divided up into 3. That's why Wichita State had to get permission from KU and Pitt State. Is the map, there was that green map. The reason it's here has nothing to do with the service area. It's because it's offered in Johnson County and the KC Metro, and anything that's offered out of service there has to come to the board. So this really isn't even a service area issue. It's a JCERT out KC Metro area. Does that make sense? So the universities do not have to ask Johnson County to go into that area. They have KU and Pitt State could go into that area. A courtesy maybe should have been offered to Johnson County, but I see that as a two-way street. Johnson County could have reached out to KU and Pitt State and said, hey, Shawnee Mission wants these courses. We haven't had anybody teach this in a long time, but at that time you thought it was independent study.
That was
So-
the issue. It
Right.
was not the issue of us not recognizing the need. It was the issue of it being asked for an independent study, which by policy is not possible. So we thought we had answered the question affirmatively based on policy.
But Shawnee Mission was intent. They kept checking. Who else could do that? They contacted KU, Wichita State, so.
So let me bring this to a close, because we're not gonna resolve that particular issue today. But I would ask Carla that you pull all parties together, including Dr. McLeod, and let's talk through, do we need to make any improvements to our policy for clarity purposes, right? If the committee will agree, we'll ask Carla to bring that back to us in January. Yeah. Now, for the issue on today that we need to approve, we need a motion to approve or a motion not to approve Wichita State providing this particular service for this group of students in Shawnee School District.
Before we do that, though, I would like to hear from Lois and Peter, having heard all this now, what is your preferred course of action?
We would like to be able to serve these students who have enrolled and we'd like for them to get the credit that they're looking for. Thank you.
I do just have, I don't want to belabor this. But so obviously the universities cover every county in the state. And so there's obviously shared. So what you're telling me is that universities have to ask universities, but they never have to ask community colleges or technical colleges. The community colleges have to ask other community colleges and the universities.
That's policy.
So it seems like we have a little bit of a disconnect there.
Just why the group needs to bring back recommendations in January.
I mean, so am I
You're
looking
right.
at that?
That's the current policy, what you just stated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry. You haven't done anything. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. What's your pleasure? Yes.
Okay. I mean, we have to request.
All right. All right, any other discussion from? Or any clarity that you need? All right. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. An opportunity to improve our collaboration. So thank you all very much. Okay, we're already on our agenda. Amy, have I missed any motions that we needed?
We're doing great.
Okay.
Go up to the academic updates and then we'll get these.
Okay, so Carla.
All right. Wow. So I want to give Tara a shout out as our academic affairs update. Tara will be leaving us. Her last day is Friday. So she's taken a position in her husband's district as a school counselor. So we're short on help, so please be patient with us. But Tara has done a great job of contributing.
You're gonna get a third.
Expand me. But Tara's done a great job with the apply and just, making those connections to the high schools with our institutions. And so we hope that will continue. Hopefully we'll get someone else to fill those shoes. But Sam and I have been very busy working on the Gen Ed master course list. Those were approved this week. Well, the Gen Ed Council approved those back in August and September, but those were all sent to the 26 institutions that submitted the master course list. And those will hopefully be on our website soon. Amy was the savior that got them all out to the institutions, attached those emails. So we're getting there. Sam and I are working now on the exceptions to the Gen Eds, and there were hundreds. So
Remind us of the policy on that.
the policy is if you want a course that you want to require a specific course from the Gen Ed group, then you are allowed to request that, like psychology has been a very common one. It's required for teachers to take human development. It's required for nurses. So that's been a common one for those programs. So if you want to do a whole program, like what we did with the elementary, that's a different type of request. That's a request to deviate from the system-wide Gen Ed rather than just request to have a specific course substituted in a certain spot.
And that, if I recall right, that policy goes to President Flanders for for approval.
Yes, the exceptions all go to President Flanders for approval. The Gen Ed Council has reviewed them and made some recommendations on some of them. The program ones, but not just the course ones. Yes, okay. I think that's all I had. We did the Gen Ed, we met with the registrars last week. They had lots of questions on the implementation. They're the ones who are gonna actually have to do it. And we plan to meet with them again in January because they had lots of process questions. We wrote the policy, but we didn't really tell institutions, well, you have to stamp it this way, or it has to be at this spot on the transcript, and very specific questions that will be addressed at the institutional level.
With your update?
Yes.
Let me just start by thanking you, Carla, for taking on additional duties and responsibilities to help lead the team. We greatly appreciate you. Before good news, I just have to say, Tara, that your work is leaving big footprints. And we are so grateful. And I was thinking about just all of the things that I'm aware that you're involved in. It includes the All-Star Awards for FAFSA, the Apply Kansas, the list goes on and on and on. I had it somewhere, but I've lost it. An OER, of course, your teacher education grant that you oversee and facilitate, qualified admissions, and the work that you have done in that area, and the liaison work that was mentioned today with KSC. And there's much more. So we're excited for you, but we're really miss your work, your passion, and the inspiration that you've provided. So thank you. Thank you. Oliver, you offered the opportunity for you to have a good news report, and then Provost, if you would step up to your good news report, please, and I think Amy's going to put on a timer. Well, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, we'll start with you, Tara.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. I have really enjoyed this work, being able to work with counselors across the state, advocating for post-secondary transition, working on Gen Ed and Math Pathways and all of these things that make higher education accessible to our residents and to our students has been amazing. So that's obviously a passion of mine before I got here, and to be able to do it over the last 3 years with this team, Carla and Amy and Sam and Daniel and President Flanders and this board that's so engaged has been really, I've grown, and I'm so proud of the work that we've been able to do. So thank you for letting me be a part of that. But speaking of, we had our first Apply free days last week. We talked about that in May and June and July. And we threw this on our institutions in July. It was a big ask and it was a big challenge. And in 3 days, they accepted thousands of reapplications last Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday across Kansas from Kansas residents of all ages. And they jumped in and they made it happen. And I know it wasn't easy. So thank you to our institutions who made that work possible and worked through tech glitches and all of the things that happened in 3 days last week. And I was able to get out to 2 different events. One was in Topeka. They had an event at the library in downtown Topeka. And I helped on the first day. I got to assist a 21-year-old woman. She had thought about taking some classes. She wanted to go back into elementary ed, and she couldn't even get her classes started. She couldn't pay the tuition. She didn't have transportation. And she walked in with her sister that day. And we got them connected with the TRIO group from KU. And I helped her fill out a college application. And every Tuesday at the Shawnee County Topeka Library, they do FAFSA assistance. And so she's going to come back next week and fill out a FAFSA and look at her possibilities for higher education. And the second event I got to go to was here in Emporia. It's a collaboration that's been going on for 3 years at Flint Hills Technical College. And Flint Hills has been the host site for Apply Kansas for the small rural school districts. It's run by a counselor from Lebo Waverly School District, just down the road. This year they had 6 high schools, 5 of them small rural high schools with like 12 seniors, right? So, and then Emporia High joined them this year. So they had over 75 students, and they had like a mini college fair with a couple different universities, a couple different community colleges, and Kansas Works was there as well. And they all sat down, they had their laptops, they filled out applications. I got to walk around and talk with students, and all of the students, not all of them, but several of them had applied to many colleges. They were casting a really wide net of universities across Kansas community colleges. And when I talked to them about what their plans were, they told me, they said, well, I want to major in radiology. I want to major in this. It wasn't just, I'm here because my counselor made me and I'm filling out stuff. They knew what they wanted. And this day, these applications wouldn't have been possible. They wouldn't have filled out these applications and cast that net. Especially, we know in our rural populations, those are students that are hit hardest and not going on to higher education. And so I got to see a whole room of these students. Afterwards, they were holding their pennants, taking pictures by who applied to K-State, who applied to KU, and taking pictures of the group of students. It was really cool. And it's been a model that we've been able to show of what our rural communities can do in collaboration with Flint Hills Technical College or a local institution in your community, and showing how you can make even our small communities can make a larger event together. So those were just 2 of the 60 events that happened last week. So
Very good news.
I saw the
Sit down as provost.
You got it.
And just to rip off that for just 1 second, K-State had a really good 3 days with the free application process. We're excited about it. Now we turn to the work of yielding those students, which is going to be the next important step. We need to make sure that as many students as possible from that group go to university, go to community college, go to higher education. But the update I want to give you quickly, though, is a good news story that came out of our general education work at K-State. And I think there's probably similar stories at other places, but it probably would be useful for you to hear that one of our programs, a very strong program in agricultural economics, has previously been approved at 127 credits. And they received permission to stay at 127 credits with the Gen Ed. However, in doing the work of integrating their curriculum with the general education, they've discovered that they can reduce that to 120 credits across all options. That is part of the benefit that comes out of this curricular examination that is now happening across all of our institutions as we consider how we integrate our programs with a common core. They're finding efficiencies in that. And so the program found that they could reduce the credits required from 127 to 120. Thought that was a story worth sharing.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks for modeling the time. Provost Mittelmeyer.
3 things really quickly. First of all, I want to give a shout out to KU and our faculty inventors, because KU was named this past year as the top 40, the 40th out of 100 institutions in the country from the National Academy of Inventors as having the most applied patents. So that's a big deal because that's economic development for the state. Secondly, we have had previously a grant from the Sloan Foundation to deliver STEM education to Native American students, and that was just re-upped with our partnership with Haskell Indian Nations University. So we're proud of that. And then the other thing I want to note is that you will be seeing in the near future requests for us. We've been working for about the past 2 years to develop the infrastructure to deliver competency-based education. We'll have our first 3 programs coming forward to you in that. And if you're not familiar with competency-based education, it is pretty much the opposite of what we do in education generally, where we hold outcomes constant and we let time vary. So it requires a different kind of infrastructure and a different kind of certification process. So I'll be happy to tell you more about that as we move forward.
Excellent. All 3 of those inside. Provost Lefevre.
Hello, well, I have 4 things for Wichita State. We're very pleased to share that as a result of our student success and persistence initiatives, our retention rate fall to fall was 2.8 this year, which is an increase over previous years. We're happy about that. Of course, we want to continue to grow that. We opened Shocker Academy this fall, which is a collaborative between WSU Tech, Mays School District, and Wichita State to offer concurrent enrollment courses. We had almost 30 students enrolled, and we know that we'll continue to grow that. It's a dedicated space in the Mays School District area. Super excited about that. And then in our paid applied learning, we have an initiative to continue to grow the the number and variety of paid applied learning opportunities we provide our students. So our fall data, we have over 9,000 of those paid applied positions, and the students are earning over $35 million. So we understand the impact that's having on the economy, not only in those students' families, but in our region as well. And the latest addition to that, that we're just announcing, or last week, was our partnership with the Bureau of Alcohol, Firearms and Explosives. Received funding, $75 million to put a facility on our campus for the Gun Crime Intelligence Center. It's the first of its kind to be located on a university campus. Will provide amazing opportunities for our students in criminal justice and forensic science for paid applied learning, working right alongside those special agents. It's really exciting, and love sharing that with you.
Thank you so much. Good news for sure. Provost Thomas.
Well, thank you. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity just to welcome everyone to campus. Very proud to have all of you here today, and welcome to the Hornet Nation.
Thank goodness, that was a good news.
What's that? You know, knowing that we were going to have an opportunity to provide a few bragging points today, I asked my deans to share some good news with me from their areas, and you know, what I've got here is a 30-page summary that convinces us, you know, we're not known for brevity in academia sometimes, but it was really reinvigorating for me to read through all of the great things that are happening around our campus. I'm not going to share all 30 pages with you today. That's another piece of good news. But I will pick out just a couple of things. You know, the ESU a cappella choir was recently invited to perform at the 60th anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech in Washington, D.C. So we're very proud of them and the talent that they possess and the hard work they put in to get to that stage. We also, from the performing arts, our homecoming musical was The Little Shop of Horrors, and the representative from the Kennedy Center American College Festival nominated 2 of those students that were performing as part of the Irene Ryan acting competition. So they will be going forward to Des Moines, Iowa to further that in that competition. He also gave an award to a former student, a ESU alumni, Allie Thomas, who I might have a little connection with, for outstanding choreography, and also to Jim Harris for outstanding stage direction. So on top of that, we recently held our 50th annual Math Day competition, where we had 449 high school mathletes, 44 math teachers from 41 schools were represented here on our campus. That is the 50th year of that event. And it is a high energy event where these students take this competition very seriously. And there is nothing more exciting than when they invite me to come and I see that big crowd of people. And then they give me an opportunity to tell bad math jokes. And they keep inviting me to come back. I don't understand it. But anyway, with that, lots of great things are happening here, and lots of other things I'd love to share with you, but don't have the time. But I'll just summarize by saying it is truly a great day to be a Hornet. So thank you.
Well, our store, to give you credit, the suggestion was yours, so thank you for that.
Okay, I did remember that. 3 quick things. Our university is processing 1,034 applications from the 3 days of free application with Kansas River Region. So thanks for that support. Secondly, we just, although we don't have the final review, we finished our 10-year accreditation peer review in late October. My fellow colleagues in the room know how much that is to celebrate. And we had a really good exit interview with the peer reviewers from HLC and feel really good about the work that has been done at Fort Hays State to get us prepared for that, and look forward to the final report, which we'll probably receive in the next few weeks. So I want to celebrate the whole institution for that and that great work. Lastly, I just want to remind the board that Fort Hays State did deploy the system-wide general framework this fall at Fort Hays State University. So our incoming freshmen, as well as any student that was currently at Fort Hays, had an opportunity to move from our gen ed or current gen ed to the new gen ed program. And I don't have numbers to tell you yet, how many of those students shifted over, but we did deploy that this fall and it's going exceptionally well.
Thank you, congratulations. And not least, but.
It just, like many of the others, it's hard to determine what kinds of things you want to share. But first of all, I want to thank Tara too as well. One of the things I will be quite honest that I was unsure about the Apply Kansas because we do not charge now. And so I didn't know how much impact that might have for us, but it did we actually increased applications. So it was a benefit to us as well. And so I'm very positive. Thank you on that. Also, just a couple of things. I want to reinforce too, the universities work with communities and schools and everyone. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had over 1,000 students come in working with Kansas Works. They came to our Bicknell Fine Arts Center and did some work with us there. The Veterans Day, as many of you know, we have one of the moving walls for Vietnam Memorial. We always have the middle schoolers come out and they participate in that ceremony and the importance of that particular day and also perform at that particular event. Our College of Technology does an open house regularly. 650 students from the region showed up for that. Also with that particular group, those connections, they went out to the Four Oaks Municipal Golf Course and did concrete work on some of the cart paths, those kinds of things as well. One of the, probably two of the really big things too as well that have happened in the past week or so at Pitt State that I think are awesome, have to do with faculty. I think most of us in here recognize that the institutions can't be what they are without well-qualified, proper faculty that are committed and have dispositions towards students. We did a university authors reception here recently. We had a number of folks, as many of you, that published in books, magazines, journals, and those kinds of things with presentations. And then actually yesterday, I did a luncheon of what we call our university professors. And one of the things, in order to extend people so that they continue to want to work and do things, sometimes it's good to have incentives. So past the professors at many universities, we came up with the term university professors years ago. And we had 4 people that were awarded that. And each year it's a very select group. It's vetted by folks, faculty on campus. And just to give you a quick synopsis on this, one of them was recognized in the Department of Physics because of their instruction and their willingness to look at alternative delivery methods on how we can reach out to students, how we can make them successful, how we look at work for them to persist. One of our instructors was in creative writing. She's an excellent writer. She has a book coming out. She has like 60 some poems being published at this point in time. And she's also actively engaged in the campus in leadership positions, either from directing creative writing, being president of our KNEA, those kinds of examples. The third person in that particular group is in our art department. And when you look at his resume, you would not, what really impressed me the most about some of the work and activity he did was, it would say it was New York, Brooklyn, art galleries. But you know what was most important? It was Parsons, it was Carthage. He was bringing that back to that area for our folks to know and be appreciative of. And lastly, we had a person that was recognized. She's out of the Department of HHPR. She was instrumental in elevating and providing value to dance. For years, that was something that many people did, that people didn't see the value possibly in that. Now we have a dance minor, a dance certificate, and they now have several dance competitions, and we've had one of those last night. So those are some things that Pitt State.
Wonderful. Thank you all for those good news reports. It will be inspiring to have that part of our regular processes here in Venice. Thank you so much. Board, good news might be that I'm ready for a motion to adjourn. Your second. Second. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you all very, very much.